In today's broadcast, we take a look in the world of high-stakes poker. Most specifically, this contest between young poker professional Landon Tice and businessman Bill Perkins. There's a lot of commentary around this contest. I'll take a closer look and relate it to why it's important for your financial literacy and decision making. So, in other corners of YouTube, you will see probably something like 10, 20, 30 videos regarding poker every single day. And of course, there's a whole range of abilities of people, etc., etc. Now, let me first talk about what poker is and what it is not. Okay? Poker is a game. People know that. The most popular version is called Texas No Limit Hold'em. Now, the reality is that many people believe that this just to be pure gambling. And it is true that the future, in other words, the eventual outcome is unknown. However, much like Life's a Gamble, which is the most important video from this channel, right, there is a misunderstanding about what drives ultimate outcomes. Meaning there is a difference between randomness that you know, meaning that you accept some type of unknown ultimate outcome. That is very, very different than pure gambling. Pure gambling is you know what the outcome is, you know it's against you, you do it anyway. Now you're gambling. Poker, however, is an applied probability game. Applied probability game. And if you don't believe me, all you need to do is look at this book that shows up on your screen, which is called The Signal and the Noise. The author, Nate Silver, graduate student of the University of Chicago in mathematics, the owner of 538.com, which is a very popular website, which really is talking about the quantitative comparison of outcomes and predictive outcomes based on a bunch of factors. Nate Silver, very famously, a couple of, I want to say 3 presidential elections ago, correctly forecast something like 48 or 49 of the states in the Electoral College. Right? In this book, The Signal and the Noise, which I highly recommend to everyone. Right? I would have loved to have written the book if I were anywhere close to qualified. Anyway, this book has a number of anecdotes which have to do with the fact that people misunderstand the math and then they misapply what the lessons that you should be gleaned from data, probability, etc. Predictions of the future having to do with models, having to do with forecasting based on the random spinning of a roulette wheel? No. Right, that is not the case. In fact, probability. That book, The Signal and Noise, inside there is a chapter on poker. In fact, that author, which is known, can be found in high-stakes poker tournaments. So, that's what actually poker is, right? And so now we come to this contest between this young man, Landon Tice, poker professional, and established business person Bill Perkins, who comes from oil trading. So from there, let's set some 2 basic things that everyone can take away. Number 1 is don't underestimate the other guy. Okay? So we have poker professional versus person who plays high stakes poker in public and, obviously accomplished, but not professional. Still, high-end recreational player, certainly, but still recreational player. The fact of the matter is that even here, the way that they set up this contest is the professional gave the recreational player a 9-unit head start for every 100. Okay, and from there they play for chips. Okay? Now, the fact of the matter is I don't know, and I can't say where this 9 originated. Felt right. Did they do any mathematics study between, the differences between a professional and a non-professional? The answer, could it be measured? The answer is yes, right? There are all sorts of analytic tools around poker which can actually measure this, okay? So they could have studied this in the past to say, okay, well, I'm going to beat this other guy by 9 per 100. Okay. I doubt that, by the way. Nevertheless, and we're not going to settle that here, meaning that a large number of the, professional community, as well as, speculators, were all have their own opinions on whether or not 9, this number 9, was a fair handicap system. I simply don't know. Okay? What I do know, however, is that as a person who just plays randomly against other recreational players, 9 sounded really high against an opponent, especially a competent one. This particular opponent also has a background in financial markets because his specific background was from oil trading. And the reason that I am pointing this out is because that means that he needed to catch up to the pro, right? So there was no shortcut but to study. There is no shortcut but to study. And there is plenty of information about this. In other words, there's a huge number of simulations which have gone on game theory, prisoner's dilemma. In other words, you can see other exercises from academia where very similar simulations, Monte Carlo simulations, etc., just as kind of like one that some people have heard of. There are a number of these different types of studies where the mathematics about the difference between these two players could have been predicted in advance. So how they got from there to 9, I'm just simply not sure. Let's give Landon Tice the benefit of the doubt, meaning that, he set it at 9, Bill Perkins accepted it, and now we have how much they need to win by. They were going to play X thousands of hands. And the reality is the stakes are exceptionally high, right? This 9, if multiplied through the amount of maximum number of hands, would have been $720,000. A tremendous amount of money, obviously. However, that's just based on scaling, right? I mean, out of that number of hands, that's what turned out to be the mathematic advantage. Now, is it possible that the young professional Landon Tice could have made up this $720,000 difference? Of course. In advance, you cannot predict the future. Fine. This second principle, however, is important because they set a very specific rule. What Landon Tice gave away is he gave away the thing where he had the biggest advantage. So now let's just pretend you're playing any kind of sport, or and you can see this all the time. Right? You don't need Monte Carlo simulation knowledge in order to understand this. You can see this in a sporting event, right? In other words, the big underdog, if they happen to get the lead, right, you see the leader still not overly worried yet. There's still time. There's still other things that can go on. They have that team has specialized players just for for that specific instance, right? All's not lost when the Warriors went down by 20 points multiple years ago. That 20 points gets made up in about 5 minutes. Why? Because that particular team had Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, who could shoot 3-pointers until the cows go home, and bang, in 2 minutes, 20-point deficit immediately erased. Why? Because they had experts at such a level that other teams could not replicate. In this instance, let's take a look. So now you have poker professional, Landon Tice, right? And the issue here is he gets behind, if he gets behind, at that very moment, what would have happened? They reset the amount of stacks of chips, the amount of chips they have, back down to the original level, to a starting level. In other words, they're taking, what Landon gave away is he gave away the edge and the amount of ability to make up this 9 from the first segment. He gave it away. And from here, the link to financial fluency begins. For people who have followed the channel, this is not a surprise, right? So we go to my favorite graph. Everyone knows that this is the graph that I like to use because this is the payout structure. And much like in insurance matters, annuities, investments, whatever it would be, you have a payoff diagram. And the same can be said for poker. So let's take a look at it here. Basically, if you win, right, what ends up happening is you start getting this line. Not very complicated, right? In other words, you start getting a line, which is your upside. Okay, let's just call it there in this burgundy. Okay. However, let's say this happens, and this is in fact what Landon Tice gave away. Because of the prior segment where I was describing this idea that you reset the amount of chips that you can possibly have, that also means that Landon Tice gave away the ability to keep winning a huge amount at any point in time. So what ended up happening? He effectively capped his gains at the blue line. And as a result, what did he end up giving up? He ended up giving up this area inside of here. This entire area here was completely unavailable to him. Completely unavailable to him. So this whole area, the squiggly lines, and you can see it. This type of giveaway here is the problem when you had to have their rule, which they agreed to, which is called resetting the stacks. So now the underdog, remember, got a big stack, has lots more chips. Now all of a sudden, he got to reset it down here. As a result, that means that this person, who's the expert, Landon Tice, the professional poker player, didn't have access to the full payout as in the burgundy line. He was capped at the blue line. This is a huge problem. And now, you could say, Jay, well, while that's also true, it's also true the flip side around. Not exactly. Because that would have presumed that the two competitors were on equal footing. When they agreed in advance, they were not. When it comes to financial matters, this is important stuff, right? Because you can remember that I have drawn this diagram for you on many other videos, lots of other videos, right? About Medicare, about insurance, annuities, long-term care insurance, stock portfolio payouts, etc., etc. We've got similar types of diagrams, and you can just see the picture here. You don't give away this blue squiggly stuff for nothing. Instead, what ended up happening is Landon Tice gave away the blue and also allowed the underdog a 9-unit head start, a 9-unit out of 100 head start. This is a common error that people misunderstanding about this payout diagram. Landon Tice made it. Financial decisions get made without a full understanding of the way this diagram comes out and the payout comes out. Because how does that flow back? That affects the price. In Landon's case, the double whammy, which is 9 too high and the squiggly line area given away. Hopefully you've gotten something from this. And right, I'm not here to debate whether or not 9 was the right number. Right? I simply don't have enough information about the differences between Landon Tice and Bill Perkins. Right? In other words, I don't have any data to be able to make that kind of judgment. And candidly speaking, from what I've heard, it doesn't sound like lots of scientific study and estimation came into making up this 9. Well, the postmortem is already here, which is after only 25% of the hands being played. Landon, the professional, was ahead, but not enough to make up the full 9. At that time, then that blue squiggly line that I showed you, he needed access to it. He didn't have it due to the agreement of this resetting of the chip stacks. As a result, the logical conclusion, which is the people that he worked with, determined that they would then forfeit. Does this happen in other walks of life? Now, the reality is that there are two things that people need to take away as far as a financial fluency set of takeaways, okay? The first one is you need to understand this diagram. I don't care what the topic is. Dental insurance, health insurance, annuity, your portfolio construction. You need to understand, okay, here are the scenarios and here are what I think are going to be the returns, the payout structure, the benefits, whatever that is. Okay, you need to understand the way your payout structure worked. That is absolutely vital. All the information sitting up here on the channel, all of it, centrally comes down to, okay, what's my payout here? What do I get? What do you get? What benefits do you get? And then, of course, there's a price involved, right? I am never going to tell you it doesn't matter what the price is. You just pay because in order to get to this payout. That combination of it as a sentence does not exist over here. It entirely depends on the price, right? In Landon Case's situation, he not only gave away the blue squiggly line, but he also gave away a 9-unit advantage from the beginning, both. The good thing is that you can be Bill Perkins in this situation. You can. When? Medicare, you're in your open enrollment period, right? You have access to every plan with the sharpest amount of this graph at the uniform price to everyone else. You get your crack at it. Medicare Advantage, that's $0 a month. Medigap, that's low 100s a month for the Rolls Royce of access to that burgundy line. That's what it is. Dental insurance, you get the burgundy line, but since the payout is limited to $1,000 or $1,500 a year, it's capped to the blue line. Therefore, if you work backwards, you should be only willing to part with less money. That's the link. If you're not Medicare eligible, does this also exist? It now exists under the Affordable Care Act. And now you can see how the lingo, the jargon now ties back to this diagram, which is that if you're Jabba the Hutt, you get the same price as Mr. Perfect. So while we don't have a crystal ball to the ultimate outcome, the fact of the matter is, when we look across financial topics, we can centrally come back to, okay, measure the cash flows so that we understand what the payout diagram is. Find out if that price then fits your particular situation. And without judgment, because candidly speaking, I have clients that from Medicaid, where they don't have enough money and every extra dollar will count, to persons with 8 digits as household net worth. And nevertheless, this analysis, and that's why I talk about scale, it didn't matter. Honestly, it did not matter whether or not the person was a Medicaid person or whether or not the person has over $10 million as a household. The analysis, the reasoning, the logic, the common sense logic is one that you can find everywhere in all sorts of walks of life, even at a poker table.